So Manchester United finished the Europa League group league stage undefeated and in the top 8. Lovely. Kobbie Mainoo was brilliant in the number 10 role. Unsurprising. Mint. Alejandro Garnacho was excellent and helped change the game in that second half. Ace. There was a lot to like and plenty we learned from that 2-0 win over FCSB. I'll tell you what, Ruben Amorim will have a big old smile on his face. Let's talk about it. So United are through to the Europa League round of 16. Ruben Amorim's got a big smile on his face. And I'll tell you what, right? That's 3 wins now. Our first time this season we won 3 in a row. We've won 5 out of our last 6. I think we saw something in that game. I would say it's exactly what United fans have been wanting to see under Amorim. Will we see more of it? I hope so. I'm going to run through the 5 big takeaways and the talking points and lessons that were learned from that game because I think there were plenty. Let's run through them. Number 1 on my list is, well, we all knew this, but Amorim is a happy man. Everyone's getting a thumbs up. That was exactly what he wanted, what I would say he was desperate for. United to finish inside that top 8. United to secure around a 16 place without the need for the 2 extra knockout games. And he said after there, more than the win was the time to train. He's been extremely consistent. You might say repetitive, but because he sees the biggest problem is the fact that I don't have enough time on the training ground. And I said this in the live show, but what he means by that is if you play 3 times a week, there's always going to be half the squad that is recovering from the other game. So you're never going to have full training sessions with every single player available doing the same thing. Now you will when you only have 1 game per week. Well, games at the weekends instead. It's a big difference. Amorim's got a big smile on his face. And if we've seen progression, and I think we have in terms of results in the last 6 games, 5 wins out of 6, February is now an opportunity to hopefully see the sort of performances that we saw away against Liverpool and Arsenal, but instead of from just a defensive perspective, kind of how we played in that second half. If you can combine those two and put that into a performance, that's what I'd love to see in February. We'll find out. Number 2 on the list. How can it not be 2 on the list? Arguably, it's number 1 on the list. Mainoo was masterful. And I tell you what, that photo is like a perfect example. He was just cruising through that game. Easy. Slow, but not cumbersome. Slow because it's just measured. It's controlled. Kobbie in the number 10 was fantastic. It wasn't a surprise to me. It wasn't a surprise to you. I like that word that Ruben Amorim used after the game, the freedom that he had. And that's what it looked like. When he walked onto that, because he did, he just walked onto that pass from Garnacho. Didn't break stride. Just walked into the box, just stroked it into the bottom corner. A little bit like that finish from the FA Cup final. You know, he just kind of stroked it into the corner as well. No real panic at any point. It was fantastic from Kobbie Mainoo. He's speaking about the freedom there of him playing further forward. And I think that's a big thing. Again, we go back to the conversation about training time. And it now means that Ruben Amorim can start to understand his players better. And maybe that's something that he learned in this game. I tell you what, it's actually better if Mainoo's closer to the opposition's goal instead of deeper in a central midfield position. That's where Bruno can play instead. And this is why he wants that training ground time, so he can learn these things and understand these things. He's had to do it in real time, in game. But Kobbie, I hope that is Kobbie playing there from now on. That's what I want to see as a United fan. I want Kobbie playing closer to goal because that's where you get the most of him. And if that means Bruno playing deeper, and I'll speak about Bruno because he's my point number 5, then so be it. Because he's just too good to be kept in as a pivot midfielder. I'm glad we saw it. And hopefully it's a start of something new. Now, number 3 on my list is the other player. Right in that photo. Alejandro Garnacho. And I think the lad deserves some real praise. There's been a lot of conversation away from just the football with Garnacho over these last few weeks, starting with being dropped against City because he wasn't doing enough in training, to the whole conversation around PSR, maybe he'll be sold to balance the books, and then Chelsea, and then Napoli, and all that jazz. But he was dropped in that same game as Rashford was, and the journeys for both players since. What I saw last night and what I've seen these last few games is a clear willingness from Garnacho to learn and develop and listen to Amorim. Because that second half performance was really mature from Garnacho. Heads up, the cutbacks that he was doing were measured. He was turning, he was looking for teammates, finding the gaps. It wasn't just about direct Garnacho, which has its threat. And I wouldn't want him to get rid of that completely, but he's developing himself. He's making himself a more rounded player in these last few games. And it goes to show me that he deserves, which I already thought anyway, but it's just more evidence, he deserves the second half of this season to prove whether he can or cannot fit in this system. Because judging by that performance, there's something there. And as I said, I think the difference in the pathway since being dropped against City, because Garnacho could have put his head down and said, sod this, I'm good enough as I am, I'll just go somewhere else and play in my position. But he hasn't. He wants to work with Amorim, and I tell you what, Amorim clearly wants to work with him. He wants to work with Rashford as well, but it's just, he's not getting the same response. You can want something, but if the other person doesn't, it won't work. And that's what he's getting, is two-way traffic. Two-way traffic? Two-way street with Garnacho. And fair play to him for doing that at a time where he must be massively distracted with all the transfer stuff. But point number 4 on this list is I want to speak about both halves and how patient United were. That first half, we had loads of control of the ball. Playing Eriksen, playing Collier, Bruno and Mainoo gave United so many players in the middle of the pitch who wanted the ball and were happy to show for the ball. And FCSB stayed slightly deeper, but we controlled it. We didn't have that attacking threat, though. We didn't have the precision in the final third, and we weren't playing it fast enough. And that's what switched in that second half. So for the first half, we controlled and we stayed patient. It was those changes from Ruben Amorim at half-time that allowed United to play like we did in the second half. And I'd say that's exactly what United fans have been waiting for. Control, but with a real attacking edge. Kobbie playing further up, Ahmad coming in, being more direct, Garnacho continuing, Eriksen playing deeper with Bruno. It was a little bit brave, really, from Ruben Amorim. It might not have worked out if they hit on the counter-attack loads, but it did work out. And United looked better as a consequence. And I think Ruben will be happy with that. That there is, I mean, it's not the blueprint because you're not going to get the blueprint from a team from playing FCSB. But that right there, as Ruben says, take that, play against Leicester on Friday like that, play against Spurs away like that. That's what we're aiming for. And that's what we saw. And that's why Ruben Amorim's got a smile on his face. And point number 5, which I definitely think is worth discussing, was Bruno playing deeper. I want to know whether that was sort of just a kind of a one-off from Bruno, or maybe this is the beginning of Bruno slightly evolving his game at the same time as Ruben Amorim clearly, I think, will now be making space for Mainoo to be playing further forward because you can see the qualities of it. Does that then mean that Bruno operating deeper in a midfield too is a role that he'll get used to and adapt? Because he is the leader and he can control the tempo of games. He slowed it down a bit more than he usually does against FCSB. I noticed that. And it was working. Nearly scored a banger as well, by the way. It was a real captain's performance from him. And potentially, let's see if this continues. If Bruno plays deeper, whether he does actually develop his game and slow it down a little bit, not always looking for the Hail Mary, not always looking to be that final ball through, but sometimes passing it off simply to a teammate. That's something that a lot of United fans have been calling for Bruno in terms of development. Saw a hint at that against FCSB. Let's see if it continues. That's my main takeaways from the game. But thumbs up. Europa League group stage, nailed. Round of 16, we'll see you in March. Now, let's play one game per week and see if we can build on this momentum that we've got from the results with the performances from training much more. That's something that we've gained. Let me know what you think in the comments.